It was a bitter December evening in Manhattan, the kind where the wind slices through your coat like it's made of paper. I was crammed into the subway car in the Lexington Avenue line heading back from a long day fixing wiring in some old Brooklyn warehouse. My hands still smelled like copper and dust, and I clutched a plastic bag of groceries and one fist milk cereal and a few apples for Lana. My 7-year-old daughter was waiting at the neighbor's, probably drawing pictures or asking when Daddy would be home. At 34, my life had boiled down to these routines: work, pick up Lana, make dinner, repeat. Ever since Madeline passed after giving birth to her, I'd traded my office job for something flexible, something that let me be there for my girl. No regrets, but the exhaustion was bone deep. The train lurched around a curve and the crowd shifted like a living thing. That's when I saw her, a woman in her late 20s, leaning against the pole near the door, eyes half closed, earbuds in. She looked new to the city, maybe, with that distant expression people get when New York's chaos hasn't worn them down yet. Her hand slipped off the rail as the car jerked harder. She teetered about to go down face first onto the grimy floor. Without thinking, I reached out. My arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her steady against me just in time. She gasped, her eyes flying open wide, startled a mix of green and hazel that caught the fluorescent lights. For a split second, we were pressed close in the crush of bodies, my heart pounding from the near miss. She steadied herself, pulling back slightly, but her gaze locked on mine. You feel so familiar," she whispered, like the words escaped before she could stop them. Her cheeks flushed pink under the pale subway glow. I blinked, caught off guard. Familiar, I'd never seen her before in my life. Or had I? Something in her voice tugged at a distant corner of my mind, but it slipped away like smoke. "Are you okay?" I asked instead, my voice low over the rumble of the tracks. She nodded, mumbling, "Sorry, I don't know why I said that." I picked up her dropped bag, a sketchbook peeking out, and handed it over. Our fingers brushed, and a strange warmth shot through me uninvited. The doors hissed open at the next stop. The crowd surged, pushing us apart. She glanced back once, then vanished into the throng on the platform. I stayed on for one more station, but her words echoed in my head. "You feel so familiar." Why did that hit me so hard? It was just a random encounter in a city full of them. But as I stepped off into the cold night air, heading to pick up Lana, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted, like an old door creaking open in the back of my mind. 2 days after that subway incident, I was still replaying her words in my head. "You feel so familiar." It didn't make sense. I'd spent the evening with Lana, helping her with homework and making mac and cheese from a box, our usual routine. She chattered about school, her drawings of unicorns and rainbows, oblivious to the knot in my chest. At 34, I'd gotten good at compartmentalizing work during the day, Lana in the evenings, and whatever ghosts from the past at night. Madeline's death had forced that on me. She'd been my college sweetheart, the one who made me believe in forever. But complications after Lana's birth took her away, leaving me to figure out fatherhood alone. I quit my steady desk job in marketing for electrical work. Flexible hours meant I could be there for school pickups and bedtime stories. No glamour, but it kept the lights on in our cramped apartment on the 3rd floor of this old Manhattan building. I was hauling groceries up the stairs elevator out again when I heard the thud. Around the corner, a woman was wrestling with a massive cardboard box wedged against her door. She was twisting the key with one hand, the box slipping with the other. It teetered about to topple. "Careful," I called, dropping my bags and lunging forward just in time to steady it. She turned, and my breath caught. It was her, the woman from the train. Up close, without the subway's harsh lights, she looked even more striking, wavy brown hair framing a face that held a mix of surprise and exhaustion, those green hazel eyes widening in recognition. "You," she said, almost a whisper. I nodded, pushing the box upright. "Looks like we keep running into each other." "Need a hand?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Yeah, thanks. It's heavier than I thought. I lifted it easily. Years of lugging tools had built up some muscle and carried it inside her apartment. It was a mirror of mine, small kitchenette-worn hardwood floors, boxes stacked everywhere like she was still unpacking. I set it down by the wall. "There you go." She wiped her forehead, smiling faintly. "I'm Julia, 306. Ethan, 307. I extended my hand, and when she shook it, that same odd warmth from the train sparked again. Familiar. Yeah, right. But why did shaking her hand feel like I'd done it before? "No way," she murmured, pulling back. "Neighbors." "Small world," I replied, trying to play it cool, but inside my mind was racing. What were the odds? Manhattan was a sea of strangers, yet here she was right next door. She glanced at the box. "Thanks again. For this, and the train. No problem." I backed toward the door, not wanting to linger. "If you need anything else, just knock." She nodded, and I left, picking up my groceries. But as I unlocked my own door, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't coincidence. Lana greeted me with a hug, her small arms wrapping around my legs. "Daddy, you're late." "Sorry, kiddo. Help the new neighbor." I ruffled her hair, pushing the thoughts aside. But that night, as Lana slept, I stared at the wall separating our apartments, wondering about the woman on the other side. A few days later, it happened again. I was heading out for a quick errand when I heard a soft knock, not on my door, but next to it. By the time I opened up, Lana had already slipped out, curious as ever. She was standing at 306, peering inside. "Lana," I called, hurrying over. Julia's door was cracked open, and my daughter was grinning up at her. "You smell like Mommy," Lana said innocently. My heart dropped. Julia knelt down, her expression softening. "Do I? That's sweet. What's your name?" "Lana. And that's my daddy." She pointed at me as I arrived, apologetic. "I'm so sorry," I said, scooping Lana up. "She gets adventurous sometimes." Julia stood, waving it off. "No worries. She's adorable." She hesitated, then added, "Come in for a second. I just made coffee." I paused. Lana tugged my sleeve. "Please, Daddy." Against my better judgment, we stepped inside. Her place was starting to look lived-in: sketches pinned to a corkboard, a laptop on the table. Artist, maybe. We sat awkwardly at her small kitchen table while Lana colored with crayons Julia pulled out. "Sorry about what she said," I muttered once Lana was occupied. "Her mom, Madeline, passed away after she was born. Lana doesn't remember her, but she has this thing about smells perfume, I guess." Julia's eyes filled with sympathy. "I'm sorry. That must be hard." I shrugged, staring into my coffee. "It is, but we manage. I switched jobs to be around more electrical tech now. Flexible, you know." She nodded. "I get it. I just moved here from Ohio. Fresh start after, well, a bad breakup and job loss. Designing graphics freelance. Not glamorous, but it's mine. We talked a bit more surface stuff, the building's quirks, the cold weather. But underneath that pull was there again, like an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. Why did chatting with her feel so easy, like picking up a conversation paused years ago? As we left, Lana waved goodbye. "See you, Miss Julia." Julia smiled. "Anytime." Back in our apartment, I tucked Lana in, her words echoing, "She smells like Mommy." It wasn't true Madeline wore Vanilla Julia something floral, but it stirred something in me. And Julia's eyes. Why did they linger in my mind? I pushed it down. I had Lana to focus on, but deep down I knew this neighbor thing was going to complicate my simple life. In the weeks that followed, Julia and I kept crossing paths in ways that felt too frequent to be mere chance. The hallway became our accidental meeting ground mornings when I'd be locking up with Lana's backpack slung over my shoulder, rushing her to school, and Julia would emerge from 306 coffee mug in hand, her hair still tousled from sleep. "Morning, Ethan." she'd say with that soft smile, and I'd nod back. You too. Simple exchanges, but each one left a lingering warmth, like the steam from her coffee curling in the cold air. Then there were the elevator rides, silent at first, until Lana broke the ice one day by asking Julia if she liked drawing. I love it, Julia replied, kneeling to Lana's level. What about you? My daughter beamed, pulling a crumpled sketch from her pocket, a stick figure family under a rainbow. Julia praised it like it was a masterpiece, and I watched, feeling a strange pull in my chest. Why did seeing them together feel so right? We ran into each other at the corner bodega too, the one with the flickering neon sign and overpriced milk. I'd be grabbing essentials after work, bread, eggs, maybe a treat for Lana, and there she'd be in the aisle pondering cereal boxes or debating between apples and oranges. Fancy meeting you here? I'd joke, and she'd laugh, a light sound that cut through the hum of the fluorescent lights. Once our hands brushed, reaching for the same carton of orange juice. Sorry, we said in unison, then chuckled. But that touch, it sparked something, a fleeting memory I couldn't place. Familiar. Her word from the train haunted me. What did she mean, and why did I feel it too, this unspoken connection, like we'd shared secrets in another life? It wasn't just the encounters, it was how they made me feel. After Madeline, I'd built walls focused on Lana, on surviving, dating. That was a luxury I couldn't afford. But Julia, she slipped through those walls without trying. She asked about my day without prying, listened when I mentioned a tough job rewiring an old brownstone. Sounds exhausting, she'd say, her eyes full of genuine concern. And I'd find myself opening up just a little about the satisfaction of fixing something broken, how it mirrored piecing my life back together after loss. She shared bits too. Her move from Ohio, escaping a messy breakup and a dead-end job chasing freelance design work in the city. New York's brutal, she'd admit, but it's alive. Her resilience reminded me of Madeline in her better days before the illness took hold. But Julia was different, quieter, with a creative spark that lit up when she talked about her sketches. One evening, after dropping Lana at a play date, I overheard Mrs. Ramirez from downstairs in the laundry room. That new girl in 306 poured things down with the fever. Looked awful when I saw her earlier. My stomach twisted. Without overthinking it, I stopped at the pharmacy on my way back, picking up some basics, Tylenol tissues, a bottle of Gatorade. It was nothing really, just neighborly. But as I knocked on her door, bag in hand, I felt oddly nervous, like a kid asking someone to prom. She answered in sweats, her face, pale eyes, glassy. Ethan, what's up? Heard you weren't feeling great, I said, holding out the bag. Figured this might help, from one neighbor to another. She blinked, then took it, a small smile breaking through. You didn't have to, but thank you, really. Our fingers grazed again, and that warmth surged. She invited me in for a minute, but I declined, didn't want to impose. Get some rest, I said, backing away. As her door closed, I lingered in the hall, wondering why helping her felt so instinctive. The confusion built from there. A few days later, Lana and I were sorting through old photos in the living room, a rainy afternoon activity to pass the time. She loved looking at pictures of her mom, asking questions I'd answered 100 times. Was Mommy pretty? She'd say, and I'd nod, showing her the faded snapshot of Madeline smiling in a park, her hair catching the sunlight. Lana held it carefully, then, clumsy as kids are, dropped it when she reached for a crayon. The photo skittered across the floor right under the door crack to Julia's side. Before I could stop her, Lana darted out and knocked on 306. Julia opened up photo in hand. This yours? She asked, handing it over with a gentle smile. Lana nodded. That's Mommy. Julia knelt down, studying the picture. She was beautiful. Looks a bit like my mom when she was young, same kind eyes. Her voice was soft, almost wistful. I froze, like her mom. It was an offhand comment, but it lodged in my brain like a splinter. Later that night, after Lana was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the photo. Madeline's face blurred as my mind wandered way back to middle school. There'd been this pen pal program linking kids across states. I'd written to a girl named Julia M. from Ohio for a whole year. Silly letters about school dreams, family. I'd forgotten most of it, buried under years of life. But now, Julia from Ohio. The name matched, and that feeling, the familiarity. Could it be? I shook my head. No way. What were the chances? But doubt crept in. I dug through a box in the closet, pulling out faded envelopes. There they were, postmarks from Ohio, her neat handwriting. I didn't open them. Not yet. Instead, I paced the apartment, heart racing. Part of me wanted to knock on her door right then, ask outright. But what if I was wrong? What if digging this up scared her off? And Lana, she needed stability, not her dad chasing ghosts from the past. The internal tug-of-war intensified. Julia was kind, creative, good with Lana. Seeing her interact with my daughter stirred something I'd thought was gone forever, a longing for connection. But Madeline's memory loomed large. I'd loved her fiercely. Her loss had hollowed me out. Was I ready to risk that pain again? And for what a hunch about old letters, responsibility weighed heavy. Lana came first, always. Yet every time I saw Julia in the hall, the pull grew stronger, familiar, like coming home after a long absence. One night after tucking Lana in, I sat by the window overlooking the city lights. The rain pattered against the glass, mirroring the storm in my mind. I wanted to know more about Julia, her laughs, her dreams, why she came to New York. But fear held me back, fear of rejection, of complicating Lana's life, of betraying Madeline's memory. Still the letter sat on the table, whispering possibilities. What if this was more than coincidence? What if that subway save was the universe nudging me toward something I'd lost long ago? I didn't have answers, but the questions kept me awake, staring at the wall between our apartments, wondering what lay on the other side. The doubts from that rainy afternoon gnawed at me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Lana's dropped photo of Madeline had unlocked something, a whisper of a memory that refused to stay buried. I'd stared at it for hours after tucking her in, the faded image blurring as my mind drifted back to middle school. That pen pal program had been a lifeline during a rough year, parents divorcing me, bouncing between homes. Writing to some girl in Ohio named Julia M. had felt safe, anonymous. We'd shared dumb kid stuff, favorite bands, school drama, dreams of escaping small-town life. But life moved on. The letters stopped. I'd boxed them up with other relics from my past, shoved them into the closet when Madeline and I started our life together. After she was gone, digging through old pain seemed pointless. Until now. That night, after Lana's breaths evened out in sleep, I couldn't resist anymore. The apartment was quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic below. I pulled the dusty box from the top shelf, its cardboard edges frayed. Inside, faded report cards, a baseball mitt from Little League, and at the bottom a bundle of envelopes tied with string. The postmark screamed, Ohio, her handwriting neat and looping on the addresses. My hands shook as I untied them, spreading the letters across the kitchen table like puzzle pieces. I started with the first one, dated over 20 years ago. Dear Ethan B. It began. My teacher made us do this, but it's kind of fun. What's New York like? I bet it's exciting. Here in Ohio, it's just cornfields and boring classes. I skimmed through her words, pulling me back, complaints about bullies, excitement over a school play, questions about my family. In one, she wrote about losing her dog. It hurts so much. Do you think memories fade, or do they stay forever? I'd replied something profound for a 13-year-old. They stay, but they change. Like how a scar heals, but you still feel it sometimes. Then I found it, the letter that made my breath catch. Near the end of our correspondence, she'd written, If we ever meet by chance, I won't need a photo. I'll know you by how you make me feel familiar, like an old friend. My heart slammed against my ribs. Familiar. That's what she'd said on the train, and again in her eyes every time we met. Julia Myers, Julia M. It had to be her, the Ohio connection, the name, the way her presence tugged at something deep inside me. But how? What were the odds in a city of millions? I paced the room, letters clutched in my fist. Part of me wanted to laugh it off as coincidence. Another part screamed to knock on her door, right then show her the proof. But fear held me back. What if she didn't remember? What if she did? And it changed everything. Lana needed stability. I couldn't upend our life on a hunch from 2 decades ago. Yet as I stared at the wall between our apartments, I imagined her on the other side, maybe wondering the same thing. Sleep didn't come easy that night. The next day dragged. Work was a blur of faulty outlets and buzzing fluorescents in some midtown office. I picked up Lana from school, her chatter about recess a welcome distraction. But back home, the letters waited on the table like unfinished business. Evening fell, the city lights flickering on outside my window. I was reheating leftovers when a soft knock sounded at the door. Lana hopped up. "I'll get it." "Wait, kiddo," I said, but she was already there. Julia stood in the hallway looking nervous, a worn notebook in her hands wrapped in plain paper. "Hey," she said, her voice tentative. "Can we talk? I have something for you." Lana beamed. "Hi, Miss Julia. Come in." I waved her inside, my pulse quickening. We sat at the table, Lana coloring nearby, oblivious. Julia slid the notebook toward me. "Open it." I did carefully. The pages were yellowed, filled with childish script, dates from the 90s, and there in the margins, to Ethan B. My own letters echoed back at me, but from her side, stories I'd shared, questions she'd asked. I flipped through, landing on one where I described my dream of seeing the world beyond New York. She'd replied, "Me too. Maybe we'll bump into each other someday and laugh about these letters." I looked up, meeting her eyes. "Julia M. It's you." She nodded, tears glistening. "I found my old journal when I visited my mom's place. The program, the letters. I didn't put it together at first, but that feeling on the train, it all clicked. You were the boy who made Ohio feel less lonely." The room spun for a moment. 20 years collapsed into this kitchen table. "I kept yours too," I admitted, voice thick. "Just pulled them out last night. Couldn't believe it." We sat in stunned silence, the weight of it sinking in. Lana glanced over. "What's wrong, Daddy?" "Nothing, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. "Just remembering old friends." Julia reached across her hand, covering mine. "Not old friends, us." That touch, it was the subway all over again, but deeper now. The familiarity wasn't random. It was rooted in those innocent words we'd exchanged as kids. Dreams, fears, hopes, scribbled on paper, bridging states and years. I squeezed her hand back a dam, breaking inside me. For the first time since Madeline, I felt seen, not as the widowed dad scraping by, but as the boy I'd been, the man I could be. We talked late into the night after Lana went to bed. She shared how the letters had been her escape from a strict home. I'd told her things I'd never said to anyone else. "That promise," she whispered, "about knowing each other by feel. It was real." I nodded, pulling her into a tentative hug. "It was always real." As she left for her apartment, the door clicking shut behind her, I leaned against the wall, overwhelmed. The pieces fit. Julia wasn't a stranger. She was a chapter I'd forgotten, now reopening. But what came next? That was the real question, hanging in the air like the city's endless hum. In the months that followed that night at the kitchen table with Julia's old notebook spread between us like a bridge across 2 decades, everything shifted. Not dramatically, like in some movie, but quietly, steadily, the way snow accumulates until the world looks new. We started slow, cautious, both of us carrying scars that made us hesitant to leap. At first, it was just coffee in the hallway, lingering talks about our letters, how I'd complained about my parents' fights, how she'd shared her dreams of drawing for a living. "I still have that sketch you described," she said one evening, pulling out a faded drawing from her journal, a city skyline she'd imagined based on my descriptions of New York. We laughed about our kid selves, but underneath was a deeper current, a recognition that we'd been connected long before the subway or the apartments. Lana noticed first, of course. Kids have a way of sensing these things. "Miss Julia comin' over again?" she'd ask with that mischievous grin, and I'd nod, feeling a warmth I hadn't known since Madeline. Julia was patient with her drawing together on weekends, teaching her how to shade clouds or mix colors. "You're a natural," Julia would say, and Lana's eyes would light up. It eased my worries. I'd feared introducing anyone new might confuse her, stir up questions about her mom. But Lana adapted, asking once, "Is Miss Julia like a new friend for us?" I knelt down, honest as I could be. "Yes, sweetie, a good one." And just like that, she accepted it, folding Julia into our little world. As winter thawed into spring, friendship bloomed into something more. Our first real date was simple, a walk through Central Park, Lana skipping ahead with an ice cream cone. Julia slipped her hand into mine as we watched ducks on the pond, and it felt right, like a piece clicking into place. "Remember that promise in the letters," she whispered. "About knowing each other by feel," I squeezed her hand. "I do now." We talked about our losses, her bad breakup in Ohio, the way it shattered her trust. My grief over Madeline, the emptiness that followed. Sharing it didn't erase the pain, but it lightened the load, made room for us. By summer, we decided to make it official. The apartments were too cramped for three, so we found a bigger place a few blocks over, still in Manhattan, but with an extra room for Lana and a corner Julia could turn into a studio for her designs. Moving day was chaos, boxes everywhere. Lana directing traffic with her toy wand, Julia and I laughing as we wrestled a couch through the door. "This is insane," I panted, but she kissed my cheek. "Worth it." The new place wasn't fancy peeling paint and spots creaky floors, but it felt like home. Lana's room got the rainbow stickers she loved. Julia's sketches adorned the walls, and in the living room I hung one of the old letters framed with a note in my handwriting. "Coincidences are the universe keeping promises." Life settled into a rhythm I hadn't dared hope for. Mornings me fixing breakfast while Julia helped Lana with her backpack, the three of us chatting over cereal. Evenings, family dinners, nothing gourmet, just pasta or grilled cheese, but filled with stories from the day. Julia's freelance work picked up. She'd show me her latest designs, eyes sparkling with pride. My electrical gigs kept steady, but now I came home to more than just Lana's hugs. To Julia's smile, her hand in mine as we watched Lana play. Weekends were the best picnics in the park where Lana chased pigeons and we'd sit on a blanket talking about everything and nothing. "Do you think we'd have met without the letters?" Julia asked, once head on my shoulder. I thought about the subway, the way fate, or whatever you call it, had pushed us together. Maybe. But I'm glad we did. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when Madeline's absence hit hard, a school event, where Lana asked about moms, or a quiet night when I'd stare at her old photo, guilt flickering. Julia understood, never pushing. "She's part of you," she'd say softly, "and that's okay." Lana thrived, her laughter echoing through the halls, her drawings now including Miss Julia in our family portraits. And me, for the first time in years, I felt whole, not fixed, but mended the cracks, filled with something new. Looking back, that subway save was just the spark. The real magic was in the rediscovery, two kids who'd poured their hearts onto paper, finding each other again as adults, battered but ready. Julia became my partner, my confidant, the one who made the city feel less lonely. As I hung that framed letter in our new home, I realized The answer to her question from the train had been there all along. Sometimes the heart knows before the mind remembers. It recognizes home even after years apart. And in Julia, in Lana, I'd found mine.